This is theater in the round here, and my voice is projected here. So first off, I just want to say thank you very much to Karen and Elizabeth and C21 for inviting me to speak tonight. Thank you also to all of you who've come. I'm really touched. As I joked to my classes today, I thought there would be like 5 people here. So thank you very much for being here tonight on a night where it's sort of drizzly and you could certainly be other places than here. When Karen invited me to speak, I very honestly felt quite inadequate and quite humbled and sheepish, because I looked at the previous speakers in this terrific series and I thought I can't hold a candle to these folks. I have no dramatic or powerful or inspirational tale of faith or life experience to tell you tonight. And other people who've spoken in this series before, I think, certainly have. So when Karen and I were chatting about what it is that I might talk about with you tonight, we thought with the Valentine's Week theme that could be something that we could riff off in this regard. And so hopefully I can offer you a little bit of a lighter meditation on gratitude. And as I was thinking about how to approach this topic, it occurred to me that one of the great revelations of the past decade has been how BuzzFeed figured out how information works in our modern era, which is to say that they figured out that listicles work exceedingly well when it comes to trying to get information across to audiences. So I decided to go with the sort of topic, 5 things that I fell in love with as the way in which I can sort of hopefully cut through the clutter of competing information that you're exposed to. And I wanted to be somewhat specific about this. I didn't want it to just be 5 sort of vague things that I would talk about. I should add as well that this list is fundamentally incomplete. Right? This is not the 5 things, the top 5 things that I've fallen in love with. This just is 5 things that came to mind when I was thinking about what I might talk to you about tonight. I had to leave off this list a great number of trivial and random things that I've fallen in love with. Things like brightly colored retro-style sneakers. I don't have a good explanation why I fell in love with brightly colored retro sneakers, but at some point along the line, the sort of front part of our house hallway testified to that obsession. I had to also leave off the list palm trees. I love palm trees, and I don't really know why. I think because I find them very tranquil. Like if you just look at a palm tree, it just looks chill. And it's not exclusively because they get to hang out beside beaches all day long, right? But they're just kind of slung over, and they have kind of this sort of adorable kind of weird hairstyle going on. So palm trees I adore. I adore T-shirts with palm tree logos on them, preferably some sort of poly cotton blend T-shirt with palm tree logos on it. I also have fallen in love with highly walkable cities that have good mass transit networks. There again, probably has something to do with an affection for cities being the place that interesting things happen, dynamic things happen in this regard. I'm going to leave off very meaningful things as well from this list, things that are, unacceptably overlooked. This includes things like 10 minutes of morning meditation, where I just try to focus my thinking on my breathing, which is incredibly difficult, but it's something that I think sort of centers me each morning when I wake up. I'm going to leave off this list teaching and writing here at Boston College, which is something that I have absolutely fallen in love with. When I'm in the middle of teaching, when I'm in the middle of writing, I think I experience what the psychologists call flow, right? You just kind of lose track of time. You're just sort of in the moment, in the experience of doing the thing that you exactly love doing, and sort of everything else fades away. So that's going to be left off the list. And probably most unacceptably left off the list is my mother and father, without whom I would quite literally be nothing, right? So with all of those things stipulated, let me give you the 5 things I've fallen in love with. Number 1, the San Diego Chargers. Now, there are 3 good objections that I can see people making to this showing up on the list. First of all, some of you might protest the San Diego Chargers do not actually exist anymore as a professional NFL franchise. I'll come back to that in a second. Secondly, why would I love something that brings me constant misery year in and year out? Okay? And those of you laughing in the room are probably like Jets fans or something like that, right? Knowing this as well, right? Thirdly, if I've already stipulated that I'm leaving off silly and inconsequential things, how is it that a professional football team makes this list? And I'll come back to that in a second. The odd thing is when I think about this particular thing that I love, I realize that it's not actually something necessarily that I fell in love with, right? It was more chosen for me, in the sense that the reason why I love this team and the reason why I think it does make this list is the fact that it was a family heirloom in many ways, right? It was my mother, season ticket holder, going to games when she was pregnant with me with a t-shirt with an arrow that said Future Chargers fan on it. It was the thing that I was able to talk to my grandfather toward the end of his life, when he was in his 90s and he lived 2,500 miles away on the West Coast. And I wanted to have something to talk to him about, but we were at very different stages of life. So the only thing that I could think of that would give me cause to get through a conversation would be us complaining about how terrible the Chargers are, right? It was the thing that centered family gatherings, that gave us as a family a reason to get together. It was the thing to declare where I'm from. Quick show of hands. How many of you in the audience are not from Boston in some way? All right, so a lot of you are not from here, right? We live in a world increasingly where you find yourself flung about, oftentimes very, very far from the place that you call your hometown. For me, the San Diego Chargers were in some ways the quickest way to be able to declare, this is my hometown, I'm loyal to my hometown in some way. And I've had a fascination with sports and fandom. I wrote a book about it last year. I find sports and fandom, as inconsequential as it is, I think it's incredibly consequential in the way that it organizes human experience. I think that sports fandom gives people 2 things in particular that they crave in the modern world: identity and community. And those 2 things are in exceptionally short supply given the way that the modern world has taken shape. I think also, and I sort of make this argument in the book, that sports provides for people the experience that human beings have gotten from religion for thousands of years. We live in an increasingly secular age. The number of Americans who do not identify with any sort of formal religious tradition, I think, approaches somewhere around 50 or 60 million. My theory is that people are getting from sports fandom the same thing that they might have been getting from religious experience in historical eras, right? They're getting lessons about what tribe you're a part of. They're getting lessons about what good and evil is, right? They're getting pathways to transcendence. There's some great writing on this that I can definitely recommend. I think one of the reasons why I'd put sports as sports fandom and this particular team in this category is that I think it organizes our lives into rituals and traditions. And the older that I get, the more that I realize leaning on those rituals and traditions is something that's incredibly important. Be deliberate about the rituals and traditions and routines that you find yourselves in, because more and more it will be the sort of bumper lanes in a kind of bowling sense that will sort of guide you toward the experiences that you have. So sports just happens to be one of those crazy things that I think organizes us in this way. Now, to get back to that initial objection, you're correct. the San Diego Chargers do not exist anymore. For those of you who follow NFL football, you may know that the San Diego Chargers have a greedy, heartless owner that 3 years ago uprooted them and moved them to LA, a historic rival of my hometown. And I think the lesson to take away there is that anything that exists for profit will never ultimately love you back. So be careful about those things that you fall in love with that do exist in that fashion. Number 2 on the list, second thing that I've fallen in love with, the laughter of my old friends. Now again, I was hoping to be very specific about this. I could just say friends, but that's sort of like generic and sort of cliched, so I wanted to be much more specific about it, the laughter of old friends. I had the unfortunate opportunity about 2 weeks ago now of attending the funeral of an old friend who'd suffered through heroin addiction for most of his life and passed away from an overdose. And because of this, we had a bunch of old buddies getting together for the memorial, and we realized that many of us, we had not seen each other, we had not all gotten together, arguably since like the last high school reunion that we'd had. And there was, obviously sort of tears and mourning and all the things that would come with that experience of loss. But a couple hours into it, when we were all hanging out at the memorial and sort of found ourselves, sort of drinking and eating together, I realized that like we were actually like laughing our asses off as well. Like we were like raucous laughter from sort of old jokes and memories that had come into our consciousness. And a part of me thought that we should like stop. We should like be more respectful, that we shouldn't be like laughing like this. But a second part of me that won out realized that there was really no better tribute that we could have to this friend who had passed on than us all getting together and sharing laughter in this way. Like I hope that at my funeral, whether that is tomorrow or 40 years from now, all of my friends are laughing their heads off, right? Because for me, there are few more beautiful noises in the world than my friends' laughter. Picture for a minute your best friend's laughter or some of your closest friends' laughter. Hear it in your head. Feel what it makes you feel, right? Imagine the specificity of that. The way in which, for me, I can picture one friend who has just a high-pitched, hyena-like laughter. I have another friend who has a really raspy laughter from a lifetime of cigarettes. I have another friend who's got he's a big guy, he's got a deep guttural laughter, right? Some friends have laughter where they're silent, they're hunched over, like just trying to breathe from the laughter that's getting in the way. Those are beautiful noises. And laughter is such, and I think some of you had my classes and stuff, know that I adore laughter for this reason. I think it's the best way of looking at the world. I think it's the best way of looking at yourself. I've always tried to cultivate, and I would encourage you as well, to cultivate people in your life who bring you great laughter. It's a sign of brilliance. Some of my funniest friends also happen to be my smartest friends as well. And I think above all, the reason why my friend's laughter makes this list is because it is a sign of no affectation whatsoever between us, right? The laughter that you share with your friends is a manifestation of stripping away any pretense at all that you're trying to be someone else. I think when we laugh together with our friends, we feel very much like that pretense and that affect is stripped away, and you're kind of encountering someone in a really authentic fashion. So that's number 2. Number 3 thing that I've fallen in love with over the years, the social gospel. So I'm, as some of my students probably know, a bit of a politics junkie. I'm slightly obsessed with sort of following the news and following politics especially. And I often wondered how it is that I tend to process the world. How and why do I tend to process news? And why is it that I pay attention to certain things? Why is it that I'm consumed by questions of economic inequality? Why is it that I'm consumed by questions of poverty? Why is it that I'm consumed by war, gun violence, backbreaking labor, and the people who have to do it? Why is it that I'm consumed by questions of racial oppression? And I think for me, the social gospel is the thing that I feel most aligned with and most identify with in terms of the Christian message. Personal conversion stories are fine, but I'm much more interested in what you actually do once you quote unquote know Christ and know that message. I'm much more interested in how does that translate to how we think about the marginalized of the world, those who are exploited, those who are doing the exploiting. So for me, it comes down to things like Matthew 25, right? When you did it for the least of my people, you did it for me, right? That's it. That for me is like, you can have the rest of the Bible. Like that's all I need, right? Messages like love your enemies. It's an impossible message to follow, right? But it is the thing for me. Luke 14:11, whoever exalts themselves shall be humbled. Whoever humbles themselves shall be exalted. Me giving this very speech is proof that I don't get what he's talking about there. I keep on my bulletin board in my office a quote that I have sort of tacked highest above my desk, and that is a quote. I think it's inspired by the social gospel, even if it doesn't come directly from it. There, but for the grace of God, go I. What that, I think, tries to remind me is that I should never assume that I deserve any of the privilege or blessings that I've somehow wound up landing in. And I should also never assume that anyone sort of has earned their misfortune if they find themselves in those situations. Now, do I think that I actually live up to the social gospel? Hell no, right? And that's a play on words there, right? In the sense that literally, right, I'm going to be standing at I think, maybe, I'll be standing at the pearly gates someday and I'll be sort of called on the mat for the fact that, like, I didn't actually live up to it. But, you know, as compasses go, it's in many ways the best one that I've come across. Number 4, thing that I've fallen in love with, and this one's in keeping with the Valentine's Day week, the way that time passes when I'm around my wife. This was how I knew that I was in love. I'm not sure that either one of us wanted to meet our soulmate when we were 21. I think we both had life trajectories that didn't involve that moment in time meeting each other. We had geographic ambition, we had professional ambition, and so we met each other in grad school, and I think the way that I knew that it was love was the fact that time passed in a completely effortless way when I was around her. It's not like time went too fast. You know, you talk about, there's the cliche, you know, time flies when you're having fun. It wasn't that time went too fast. It wasn't that time went too slow either. Like some of you who have my classes know what that's like. Rather, there was a kind of glow and sort of sparkle to the world and to the time that we spent together when we were around each other. And I knew, you know, I mean, early on this was because the time was very exciting, right? We were young, we were in, you know, living in New York City together, we were having amazing late nights out and, you know, and huge networks of friend groups and crazy travels. Often in those early years, we lived apart from each other. So I was working in one city, she was working in another. We'd only see each other on weekends. But those weekends were the time was magical. It was some otherworldly time that was experienced. And even as things have gotten mundane, because when you become an old like we are, you know, things like Tuesday, it's just like a Tuesday night, and you're just like making dinner, right? But like time still passes in such a beautiful way that's how I knew that it was love, right? The time passes together because of all the reasons that I fell in love with her, right? It's the way that she looks in the morning when she wakes up without makeup on, and the sort of way that the light sort of catches her skin. It's the way that she is so eloquent and just communicates such brilliance. I highly recommend falling in love with and marrying someone that's smarter than you, because it will make the dinner conversations for the rest of your life incredibly wonderful. Sense of humor. I married the funniest woman I've ever met. Like really, like her humor was apparent to me from the very earliest email and text exchanges, and it persists until today. She's very funny. She loves funny people, and she's very funny herself. And so I think it's because of all of those things, right, that time, time just flows beautifully, and this is sort of one of the things that I think I've fallen in love with. Fifth and final thing that I've fallen in love with, holding my daughter's hand. Again, trying for some specificity here. It's hard to explain how you feel about your kid when you're a parent. Before I was a parent, I would hear people talk about their children, and I thought they were in some sort of cult. Because it's really hard to, like I didn't understand, like they were trying to explain it, but they couldn't, it just sounded weird. And now here I am, sounding like I'm in a cult, trying to explain it to you. This feeling that I have for now my 6-year-old daughter, Lucy. But again, to be specific here, it's holding her hand is the thing, right? This is true, I love this in a literal sense because my daughter has this weird thing that she does when you hold her hand. She's done it since she was like a 3-month-old. She really loves to like dig underneath your fingernails, like try to lift them off. I assume that she's in training for some sort of enhanced interrogation at the CIA one day. She likes to like rub the top of your fingernails and like smell your fingernails and your head. It's very weird, it's very weird. I love it. I love it, right? But I love holding her hand in more of a metaphorical way as well, right? In the sense that by holding her hand, I'm guiding her into this world. That can be, sometimes it's protective, right? We're crossing the street together, like there might not be like a car within like 50 miles, right? And I'm like, I don't know. There could be one that comes out of nowhere, It could be like we're in an airport or a big crowd somewhere and I grab her hand, right? It's a protective holding of her hand. It could be a pedagogical holding of her hand, right? Where I'm holding her hand trying to teach her something, where I'm starting to teach her how to ice skate, and there's this delightful sense where initially, when she was starting to learn, she was super wobbly, and so I had to keep tight, right? And now I can sort of just kind of lightly hold her hand because she's not maybe going to fall. I love holding her hand playfully, right? When we're doing thumb wars in the back seat of the car, driving somewhere because we just don't want to be bored, right? I love holding her hand during Friday night dance party, which is when my wife and I get home from work, she gets home from school, and we all get to pick a song to put on, and we just dance around the living room like it's some sort of nightclub, right? And she wants to do this sort of like swing dance move that she doesn't quite understand how to do yet, but still, holding her hand in that regard. I fell in love with holding her hand because I think when I'm doing that, I'm seeing the world through her eyes, and I'm experiencing the world anew. And that holding of her hand kind of anchors me to that experience. The thing is she's not always going to want to hold my hand, Oh, damn, I didn't think I was going to cry, but yeah, when you have a kid too, like I didn't used to cry so much, but like, again, I joke about this, but now it's like a Pixar movie, man, puddles. She's going to grow up, right? She's going to grow up and she's going to not want to hold my hand because she shouldn't, right? She shouldn't, like, you all don't want to like walk around like holding your dad's hand, right? That'd be weird, right? So the sort of lesson here is that sometimes you savor the thing that you fall in love with because it doesn't last forever. It can't. So I like to use a lot of quotes in class. I'll finish with this one. I use quotes because they're much smarter than anything I could ever say. This one I like especially. It comes from Michel Foucault, who more or less I don't understand anything that he wrote, even though I use his work a lot. Here's what Michel Foucault has to say that I think is of relevance. What is true for writing and for a love relationship is also true for life. The game is worthwhile insofar as we don't know what the end will be. This talk, on the other hand, does have to come to an end. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for humoring me. I thank you for listening to me, and I wish that you all find a million things to be in love with in the course of your life. So thanks very much for listening.